Recently, I got a call from a friend of mine, Tom at iMark, and they make die cut machines or cutters so that you can have, let's say, a wallet and have the edges rounded and they're die cut. So he had some customers run into an issue where whenever it printed, the left side would be cut off on some of the wallets, and then on the right side of the print, it'd be cut off on the right side. So it wasn't an even print even before it got die cut, and then once you die cut it, it was even more skewed. And he asked, how can you move the actual photo nodes to the placeholders so that when you print it out and you cut it, all the images are even on all sides? And I wanted to show you how that would go. So the way to do this would be to build a template, and we'll go into products and services under our setup tab, and then packages, templates, my templates, and I'm going to create a new template. And 8 wallets die cut. And this doesn't have to necessarily be used with die cutting wallets. If you print out and you notice that the prints on the left side are cut off more, and like if you're using, let's say, wallets is the easiest place to see it because they're so small that whenever it cuts off quite a bit. But let's say you have two 5x7s. If on one side the let's imagine there's two of them. On one side it's cutting off over here, and another side it's cutting off on this side, and that's just due to bleed and those type of things. This would work for that. So it's not specifically for die cutting, you just see it more once you cut it even further. So the way I typically start off to fix this problem, I have a background in working in a lab, so I've done this multiple times. We're gonna start off at switch this to inches. So a wallet is 2.5 by 3.5. If we make it a little bit smaller, we're gonna end up with a white line all the way around whenever we butt everything up right next to each other. So rather than doing 2.5, we're gonna try 2.48, and then 3.48. Whoops. Oh, my template size, I'm sure, is not set up for a 8x10, so we'll go ahead and want to change that. Okay, so there's our first one, and we're going to copy and paste right now we're just kind of doing a okay job getting the placement right. And whoops, undo that. I think it is this one right here. Okay, so typically, if these were 2.5 by 3.5, multiply 2.5 by 4, you would end up with 10. So it should go all the way across, and we can see that it's a little bit shy of that 10 inches, and that's because we took off 0.02 of an inch from each one. So they end up adding up. And let's go ahead and select those, copy, paste, and then select those, drag them down, and we're gonna go for let's see, these we want right at 4 inches, so it starts right in the middle. So we can set our position at 4 inches, and this should be 0.04. Whoops. 0.04. And then we're going to do the same thing. 4 inches, 2 point, this is where the math starts getting a little bit tricky. So 2 point, we'll try 2.5 and see how close that is. I don't think that's correct. I think it's 2.48 is what I think is correct. Okay, so, and then this one should be, if I'm doing all the math correctly, 4, and then that should be 5, and then, whoops, I am off there as well. Okay, let me look at this. There we go. So we can hold down shift to nudge it exactly right in the spot, and let's see, I think that one's pretty close, but we know that one's going to be 7.48, and that should be 4. So it's a little bit of moving things around and finding, but because we took off that 0.02, we have to factor in each one of those for the placement, and then we'll do the same thing for the top, and I'll go ahead and kind of speed up that so you don't have to sit through me adding in my head. So let me go ahead and do that real quick, and then we'll catch up. Okay, so now we have those images with, and we've compensated for the bleed, so whenever it expands, it should come close to hitting the edge. You'll want to print out a test print and see if you got a little white line. A lot of times what will happen, and you never know this with your printer, but it actually will skew one way or the other, or it will advance and cut off more on one side than the other. And so once you print out your guide or print out your test, then what you'll want to do is make adjustments. So let's say when we print it out, we notice that a little bit more is cutting off over here. It's actually cutting into the image, and then on the right side we see a little bit of a white line. Then what we would do is just nudge it. I'm holding down shift and clicking my arrows, and I'll go a little bit further so you can see how that's actually working. But we're going to nudge it, and then if we're die cutting, print it out, run it through the die cutter, see how closely it then lines up with the die cutting, and then make adjustments. Now I started off with 2.48 by 3.48. You might find that 2.49 works better for you, or 2.46. So you'll want to do a little bit of testing, and also something that helps a little bit with die cutting. Even if the die cutter should be pretty consistent in how it die cuts, if it's maybe, let's say, a little bit off one way or the other, you can just die cut a sheet and then scan that and then use it for a basic tracing guide. You just add it as a PNG, and then you know where it's going to die cut. So if the die cutter is a little bit off, that's also something you could do. But what you'll want to do is print it out and then test it and see how close you're getting. And you can be pretty precise with your templates. And even though your printer is, let's say it's consistent, it's just not, you know, 0 accurate, you know, and as for placement on that print and with bleed, and then any other additional things like die cutting. So it's a little bit boring, but if you've run into this problem, this is typically portrait photographers that, let's say they have a name that's showing up right here, and if it cuts off on one but doesn't cut off on another, that's something they want to fix. So that's the reason for this video. So a real quick shout out to Tom. He's the one that asked. He's over at iMark. If you're not familiar with iMark, they make these really cool die cutters. Let me see if I can pull one up. Here's their website. So you would print out an 8x10 and then put it inside this machine, and then you run it through the machine, and it cuts into your rounded die cut wallets. Great for seniors and those type of portrait setups. But so if you're curious about it, check it out. Go imark.com. Thanks, Tom, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.